Blue Light Special. What are we doing today? Well, let's show you. This will be the first part of this project. The other part I'm not really filming. I haven't decided whether I will at all or not. I might go over it very briefly. But what we're doing tonight is this right here. We've got a new Pioneer double din and all of the wiring. Dash kit, etc. Mind the text messages. And this is actually for my amp. I'm going to wire it in as well since I have it out. But we're not going to do about the amp wiring and the subs and everything yet because my box isn't glassed. So we're going to go ahead and knock my drink over and pull this. Well, it's not really a piece of shit. It's just ugly and old looking. We're going to pull this out and we're going to wire the harness in and get a new radio installed. Okay, one of the first things that I've done is I have a USB hookup, but it's in the back of the unit. So what I wanted to do was run my USB wire to the stock location in these, which is down here. So I have pulled the tray out, and what I've done is I took the switch off the back of the USB cover, and my cord is actually big enough where it is pushed into the back here, and I'm actually going to fill the gaps with some hot glue, and I'm also going to put some hot glue behind it back here just to hold all this in place. I don't like using epoxy really because it's very brittle and it doesn't stick very well, so I'm going to try to use hot glue first and see how long that will last, and if it needs to come back out and need to epoxy it or even JB weld it, so be it. I'll just do it that way. But quite honestly, I've got enough going on where I don't feel like dealing with two-part epoxy and mixing it and scraping it and mixing it some more. So that's what we're going to do as far as USB is concerned. I've already figured out where I'm going to put my mic for my Bluetooth, and I'm going to stick it right here on this inside of the steering column, and I'll run the wire back. And I've got all my wires and everything set out that I need, all my wiring equipment and everything. And I'm going to try to solder everything together so I don't have to use butt splices. And then I'll probably either heat shrink tube over it, or I'll just use some Jap wrap over it, and that'll be fine. So the first step that we need to do, other than make sure we have everything that we need and figure out all of our weird things like the USB down here, is we're going to pop off this cover. And I've had it off a couple times, and I usually take off this side over here first, but I'm going to try not to this time, if maybe we can manage here. Remember the rule number one, don't rip on stuff and break shit. So there's that. Next is the 4 bolts on the side. I just got a 1/4-inch ratchet and a 10mm. Most of us have probably had one of these out before, or close to it if you were painting trim like I did. Steering windstalls are actually pretty easy. There's a reason why even Best Buy will do it for you now, is because it's really, anybody with any half-ass knowledge can do it. Try not to drop a screw down in there, or knock over your Crown and Coke, hit your elbow. I've actually bought the wiring kit and the dash kit for this. I used to just cut the harness off and just wire it straight into the harness, but I don't know. There's something a little bit cleaner, and you get a little bit more slack in the wires when you do it this way. So now we get to see the mess that is all of this, and I'll be damned if it doesn't look like somebody has been in this thing before me. So let's just start unhooking this stuff, get it out of here. I'll be damned. looks like. Oh, well, there's the answer to that. Is they've literally been cut off because of the previous owner, who was the gang member, apparently. And what the fuck is this, people? Do we see this? And that's on a red. Like, what the just a bunch of cut wires. Okay, so I guess we assume that that was a remote wire at one point, and the cut RCA cables I just pulled out were to the amp. There's speaker wire, and what would this other black wire be back here? What in the hell? Well, for God's sake. This is why we can't have nice things. Well, I'm gonna pull them wires out. Girl, what the f... Another rogue wire. What else is back here? Well, that would be why my other old USB didn't work. It was never plugged in. Well, how about these little learning experiences that we have? This is why I hate buying used cars. This car was bought from a Toyota dealership too. I don't think that would plug into my... Nope. Alright, so be it. For the sake of not cutting up the stock wiring, I'm going to just leave all that in there. Even though this is absolutely getting cut off and taped. I don't understand that at all. Why that stuff is the way that it is. Okay. Well, that wire will get cut off. Now I'm going to tape that up. Okay, so basically this is just a bunch of accessories and things that we're not really going to be using. So I'm actually going to put a piece of tape and hold it up out of the way, just so it doesn't get in our way with the rest of this. And since this car comes with a amp in it, I'm actually going to de-pin this brown wire right here. I know we're very far away. This brown wire is the amp trigger wire. I'm actually going to de-pin it, and I'm going to cut this wire back, probably about here. And since the wire is as small as it is, I'm actually probably going to use my own remote wire. I'm not fully decided yet. I'll either use my own remote wire and run it back, or I will go back to the amp and I will actually splice off the wire back there and run it to my amp, because I'm going to be using an 800 watt Orion amp, and that little thing back there is not going to matter much. So that's probably what I'm going to do, as long as there's continuity through that wire. And I'm actually going to get my multimeter real quick and check that and make sure that this wire isn't broke or cut somewhere like apparently all the other wiring in this thing was. So I'm going to check the continuity in this real quick and see if it's going to work, and if it does, then I'll just splice into the back for the sake of simplicity. And I've spent more time just going over everything before I actually do this than it would actually take you guys to do it if you don't have any extra stuff to do. Okay, as it turns out, this little brown wire is in fact our amp remote wire. Somewhere in the harness it changes color, and when it gets back to the little mini amp underneath the spare tire cover behind the back seat, if you have a back seat, which I don't, the wire actually turns into a mint green color, but I checked the continuity and it is good all through the harness. So what we will do, it should work, is so we continue to use the little mini amp back there, since the amp that I have will only be powering my subwoofers. We will leave this wire intact. We'll plug in everything, and at the back when I hook up my amp, I will just splice into that little green wire, and I will use that for my trigger for my main amp too. So I put my RCA cables in, and until I get a chance to actually run them through the trim of the car to the amp, I'm just going to plug them in, and I'm going to leave them in the glove box hanging in there. So we're going to tape this back real quick, and we are going to, well, I'm going to go inside, and I have my wiring for my radio and the wires to plug into the harness. So I'm actually going to do my coloring and solder my wires together inside, and I'll get the harness set in there. That way I can refill my drink responsibly, and the rest of this should basically be plug and play, and the radio should be going in the next 15 minutes tops. Okay, I was looking over the dash kit, and the one thing that I did have to change, I test fit everything before I actually got ready to put it in, and on the ends here, they stuck up, and it was hitting, it was mounting out here like this, and it stuck out a lot, and I didn't like the way it looked, so I actually cut it so it would sit flush with the radio like this, so I can actually mount that on there, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so let me screw these onto the side of our radio, and then we will hook all the wires in and make sure everything comes on and works properly, and then we can put it all back together. Okay, I've got these mounted on, okay, and it should support it okay with just the two here. It should support it with just the two, since it mounts to the chassis right here, and that's right in the center, so it should be okay as far as twisting and anything is concerned. If we do get worried later, we can always elongate this hole a little bit more right here and put a third screw in, or maybe even one back here, just in case you're curious. But your head unit might be different. This is a Pioneer touchscreen, so yours might be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do now is actually hook everything up and make sure everything comes on like it's supposed to, and everything's working, and all the speakers are on, and then we will go ahead and put the dash back together and enjoy a much better than stock stereo here. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Turn everything off, unplug everything. Well, actually, we don't even need to unplug it. We can just ever so nicely put everything back together, and hopefully, oh yeah, that's gonna be good. Okay. clip is fighting a little bit. That's in. All right. There we go. And that's all there is to it. So we don't get copyright infringement. Probably going to have to blank that part out anyway. That's all there is to it, really. Like I said, there's might be a part 2 to this about my stereo in the back, which is maybe 15-20% done. But my USB is hooked up down here, and it looks okay. I don't have auxiliary, but it's almost 2018. Who actually still uses an auxiliary cord? So we have our Bluetooth, and we have the USB, and we've got the RCA hookups, and our remote wire will already be ready to go when I get my amp mounted in the back. I am going to be putting a backup camera on this because, I mean, the visibility out the back of these is really horrible, and I'm probably going to end up getting window louvers now that I saw some other Ravens with the louvers on them, and I think it actually looks kind of cool. And I mean, let's face it, since I'm not going to rocket bunny this, it's going to be just perfectly fine the sleeker it looks. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Hope this was a bit of a help to those of you who don't know how to install one of these, or just maybe haven't yet, or were curious on some of the things that you might run into, such as having to trim the dash kit for it. But I think it looks great, and if I end up wrapping this in some carbon or something, I might take these off and wrap them too, just so it kind of blends in just a little bit better. But overall, I'm very happy with it. I think it looks great. So thanks for watching.